Let's tackle the Jorge Martin news first. He's the World Championship leader, after all. Dave, give us some context, because this leapt up at us while we were counting the minutes at a rain wreck test at Mugello. It was something of a surprise, right, on Monday?
It was a surprise. At 5:30, we had a little bit of a tease that something was about to happen. And then at 6 o'clock, the bombshell dropped. And it was a proper bombshell, really, because it was the decisive move in which everything else shakes out. And honestly, props to Aprilia to stealing Ducati's thunder, because the biggest news, the biggest story in MotoGP right now should be Marc Marquez to factory Ducati, but Aprilia have sucked all the air out of the room, and it's gone off a bit of a damp squib, really. What appears to have happened, we thought, or we were told that. Certainly, there were reports on Thursday from very credible journalists that Ducati had chosen Martin to be Pecco Bagnaия's partner for 2025 and 2026, but something appears to have happened over the weekend. Obviously, Ducati thought, well, we'll put Martin in the factory team. Well, what a lot of us thought, put Martin in the factory team, put Marc in Pramac, and away we go. It should be fine. It'll all be perfect. Only they sort of forgot that Marc Marquez might have a say in all of this, and he said, don't really want to go to Pramac, thank you very much. And Pramac have the right to the factory bikes, so that sort of really ruined it for them as well. Made it very difficult for Ducati, and it seems that sort of offers were made to Martin that he was not interested in having, and in the end, Ducati chose. When the crunch came, it came down to Marc versus Martin, and they chose Marc. And Martin very sensibly drew his own conclusions and said, what more do I have to do, for God's sake? And left.
My question to both of you to kick off this section of the podcast is it a good move for both parties? I mean, undoubtedly, Jorge Martin has improved, you would imagine, his salary. I mean, say, let's put a number out of the sky. Say he was earning 2.5 at Pramac. As a Ducati rider at Pramac, you'd have to imagine he's on a much bigger wedge as a number one rider for another rival manufacturer. But Neil, coming to you first, I mean, what's sort of your thoughts? Is it a good move for both parties?
It's a good move for Aprilia, absolutely. They've pretty much got the best possible rider that I think they possibly could have, with the exception of Marc Marquez, but we never really heard of Marc being linked to Aprilia. So yes, they're getting the rider that's leading the championship this year. They're getting one of the most talented riders on the grid, one of the fastest riders. You speak to people within Pramac Ducati and they say that Martin has created one of the best ambiences that a lot of those technicians have worked in. So you're also getting a guy that knows how to sort of build a team dynamic, build a team ethic. And yeah, I mean, you just have to look at the championship to realize what a good deal it is. It's the first time I think that Aprilia have had a rider that has fought for the MotoGP championship within their MotoGP team. I know they've had Andrea Iannone, who's won races before going to Aprilia. They've had Maverick Vinales, that's won MotoGP races before going to Aprilia. But both riders are very flawed, and we're never really going to be full MotoGP championship contenders or animals. Whereas I think Martin most certainly is. You just have to look at last year and this year. From Martin's point of view, it is a risky move. There's no doubt about that, because he's leaving the bike and leaving the factory that finished first, second, third, and fourth in Sunday's Italian Grand Prix. The manufacturer that has won 6 out of the 7 races so far this year, that continues to lead the way and be the benchmark in the class, for a factory that is definitely on the up, has potential, but sort of the bare facts are that have never really been more than a sort of win a couple of races every year kind of factory. But I guess Martin will take great motivation in trying to bring that up a level. And you could say that this is maybe the final piece. We've sort of been wondering for the last couple of years just how good is the RSGP Aprilia, because let's face it, Aleix Espargaro and Maverick Vinales, excellent riders, but not riders that have consistently been there at the front ever in their career. And now they're bringing someone that has been there at the front for the past two, season and a half. So brilliant for Aprilia, risky for Martin, I would say. But then I would also add, Martin didn't really have any other option. I mean, he's been saying all year that it's either the Ducati factory or I'm leaving. And when it was becoming apparent to him over the weekend that they were having second thoughts about, I think, what we hear or what we've been told is that they told him after Barcelona, that second factory seat is for you. And then when they started backtracking and having second thoughts, when Mark was saying, "Oi, if I don't get the factory seat, I might leave." I mean, Martin really had no other option. There's no way that he could have just said, "You know what, don't worry, lads, I'll stay in Pramac for another year," because he would have completely undermined his own self, his own words. People would have questioned his ambition, perhaps, or, are you really a top level rider if you're just happy to sit in a satellite team for the best section of your career? So I think it's risky for Martin, but then I don't think he had any other option than to leave Ducati when they were edging towards putting Mark there.
Dave, I mean, Neil's hinted at some of the reasons there, but another big question, I think, is why has he left a bike that he's leading the championship on? I mean, he's probably not poor. I mean, he's a factory sort of back rider. Why jump ship?
I mean, the number I heard for his salary was 4 million, and they were offering Fabio, if the numbers are to be believed, 4 million. So you wouldn't think they would be getting a good deal more than that. Fabio. I mean, why? You would think that Martin would not be getting a good deal more than what was offered to Fabio, so maybe 5. But then Massimo Rivola did say I had to phone my boss to see if it was okay. So there was probably some numbers needed adjusting. But why is he leaving? It's quite simple. Pride. He has done everything. I mean, what more could he do to prove that he deserves a factory Ducati? I mean, just in terms of pure performance, pure numbers. I mean, obviously last year he was much better than Marc Marquez. He handily beat Enea Bastianini. He made Pecco Bagnaia's life hell. He made it very, very difficult for him to win the championship, even though, as far as Ducati are concerned, the right people ended up, or the right rider ended up winning the championship. He's leading the championship this year. He's improved since last year. He's a better rider than he was last year. What more could he do? Basically, it was clear that Ducati didn't. I mean, it's not that they didn't want him; they weren't prepared to do enough to keep him. And so it's just basic pride. He's going off to somewhere where he will be appreciated, because he is going to be. They're hiring him to win a champion, or to try to win a championship. Whether he can do it on Aprilia is a different question. I mean, I think the bike is going to be fine, but I'm not sure about the rest of the organisation around it.
I remember last year speaking to Paolo Ciabatti when he was still working as sporting director, and he told me that he was convinced from the first moment that Bastianini got chosen ahead of Martin for the 23 factory bike, that Martin was going to be a championship challenger after that, because he has this sort of element where he felt slighted and he's a very proud character, and that was going to fuel them on. You just have to look at where he fell short last year. He didn't fall short because he lacked speed. It was because he was too proud. He was trying to show just how good he was to too great an extent. So I think you're definitely going to have a fully motivated Jorge Martin for the rest of this year and next year when he goes to Aprilia, just because he will want to show Ducati what they're missing out on, as he kind of has been for the last year and a half. But then I think you have to also look at Ducati, how they've handled this situation. Like, I guess it's not a total disaster because they have Marc Marquez alongside Pecco Bagnaia. That is a incredibly fast and strong factory team. But did no one think of sort of checking with Mark before they told Jorge, you've got the factory seat? Did no one really check with Mark to say, would he be okay if they just slotted in to Pramac, or did they just assume that it was all going to be A-okay? And this is maybe a situation where you think the kind of deftness of Paolo Ciabatti's touch is maybe missing somewhat from the kind of the organisation at the moment. We know Mauro Grassilli has come in as Chiavati's replacement. But I think, as he told us during the team launch at the start of the year, he's not really experienced in this kind of thing. And suddenly he's been thrown into this situation where he's dealing with massive egos, earning massive amounts of money with massive track experience. And he's the one that's kind of having to try and ease everyone's fears and tell everyone, look, we're thinking about you. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And it just seems like the weekend maybe wasn't handled in the right way. The kind of communication between all parties wasn't quite what it should have been.